I don't mean to steal a question that was addressed to Jeremy, but I just wanted to answer, or just kind of say something about the first question that was asked about your protest. You asked a question about protesting at Lockheed Martin. It was every Martin Luther King Day, and it seems fruitless, and it may seem pompous of me, but I can tell you why. Because you're organizing a tactic instead of organizing. I'm going to disagree with something that Kevin said earlier, which he said we need to be out there protesting. I totally disagree with that 100%. Protesting is a tactic used by organizers. We need to go out and organize. We have to out-organize the other side. Protesting is one of those tactics. Bringing pressure to Congress are a set of tactics. But we have to make sure that we're out organizing them. And it's not just a once a year, one day a year. It's the organizing every single day that may publicly manifest itself less often. But it's that work of making sure that we're creating that community, that we're organizing. This is the work that IVW does on a daily basis within the veteran and GI community, of organizing, of making sure that we're creating that community. And it's a much harder goal. It's much more difficult to do. It's very trying, but it's effective. It works. The civil rights movement didn't happen because of lunch counter sit-ins. It happened because of the months and years of organizing before that. Rosa Parks wasn't some woman who was just tired one day. She was a trained organizer. That's what we need to do.
Well, and the question that was directly asked of me about Lockheed Martin, I think we live in times where three major things are happening that are hurting social justice activism. One, and perhaps most importantly, is the sort of mass co-optation or surrender, or co-optation by the Democratic Party during the last couple of election cycles of social justice movements, and you know, the Obama people were very effective at this. Howard Dean was pretty effective at it. Kerry was moderately effective with it, but Obama just took it over the fence and really co-opted large sectors of the sort of organized peace movement. The other part is that I think that online social networking, the prevalence of the internet now, I think has kept a lot of people from leaving their computers when it comes to thinking about activism. A lot of people think that emails are activism, and they can be, or that blogging is activism, it can be. But if your only connection to the outside world, or your only connection to confronting those in power is your internet connection, then I think you have a very serious problem in front of you. And I think that that's depleting numbers. And I think we've seen it quite radically over the past decade, the decline in numbers of people that show up. And there are other factors, but I think that certainly is one of them. I think it's great when I go to a community and people say, well, we've had this vigil going for 10 years at this company. Let's remember, Lockheed Martin is the biggest defense contractor in the United States of America. If you guys aren't confronting them here, who will? And I think that it's sad, but entirely predictable that you send 600 press releases out and don't get a single camera or a single reporter. That's the way the corporate media function. They're not interested. Look at when Winter Soldier hearings were held in Maryland. You had all these Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. I was down there and honored to be one of the quote-unquote civilians asked to testify. There was a counter demonstration of about 12 people who were crazy people. They got, and I say that literally, I mean, they were saying things that were just absolutely nonsensical and yelling at veterans and in a way that was just, I mean, it was lunacy. But the point here is, the Washington Post was the only major paper to cover Winter Soldier, and they covered it in the Metro section. And they gave equal time to 12 people that had gathered there. It was on the anniversary of the invasion and occupation of Iraq. You had scores of veterans, not all of whom were on the same page by any means. It was an incredible opportunity for media organizations to rise to the occasion and interview these people. And yet they put them on the same level as 12 astroturfers who just showed up to yell at them as they came in there. I think, though, that we are moving toward a situation in this country where fewer and fewer people are going to be able to stand by and be silent. And I think it would be important to maintain that vigil at Lockheed Martin. we see this movement against Blackwater not taking hold in New York or Washington, D.C., but in rural communities where Blackwater is building these compounds. 30 people were arrested at the gates of Blackwater a few months ago in Mount Carroll, Illinois, a place that most people have never even heard of, where Blackwater set up a camp. A tiny town of 900 people in Southern California beat Blackwater and chased them out of their town. Blackwater spent $1 million fighting a town of 900 people, and they lost. And they lost because that town came together. They went after and they had a recall of all of the members of their local planning commission that had voted in secret to authorize Blackwater's presence. They did grassroots activism, they did networking, they had people from around the country coming to help them, and they went after those elected officials that were cutting secret deals with a mercenary company behind the scenes. There are examples of citizen movements and ordinary folks rising up and actually winning, but these things take time, and they sometimes take many, many decades. Regarding the issue of corporate personhood, I completely agree that we should have campaigns that, and there have been campaigns that directly target the rights of corporations that are meant to be equal to human rights. In many cases, corporations have more rights than people do. One recent thing that's happened is that the war companies that are being sued for their crimes abroad and domestically are appealing to Attorney General Eric Holder to certify them as what's called a Westfall defendant. The Westfall Act was passed during the Reagan administration as a way of trying to shield federal employees from individual tort liability for torts committed during the course of their government service. In other words, the government would intervene if an individual federal employee was sued by a private person for an alleged crime or violation committed while on the sort of payroll for the government. Donald Rumsfeld was certified as a Westfall defendant in a torture case by the Eric Holder Justice Department recently. And what that means is that the US government replaces the name Donald Rumsfeld in the defendant listing for the case. Companies are now appealing, and Blackwater just did this a few weeks ago, to Eric Holder to certify Blackwater as a Westfall defendant for their war crimes in Iraq, in the case where the Iraqis are suing them. And they have asked Attorney General Holder to make the US government the defendant in the 5 cases in the Eastern District of Virginia alleging war crimes against Blackwater. The issue of corporate personhood once was something that sort of existed in the abstract. Today, you have these companies that are effectively mercenary killing squads around the world that are making the machinery that makes these illegal wars possible, and they are being shielded now by the Obama Justice Department under the idea that they are equivalent to one federal employee when it comes to the torts that they're committing against others. Ralph Nader recently told me when I interviewed him about this issue that he thinks that if the corporations want corporate personhood, that they should then have to face the corporate death penalty for their crimes. And then finally, in terms of Obama, the behind-the-scenes stuff that you asked about Obama and the issue of sort of what's happening there, I don't think, first of all, I don't think that this is going to be a I fooled you moment with Barack Obama where he's going to sort of have campaigned on a pro-war platform and then turn around and end the wars. Even as Kevin rightly points out, his Iraq platform is actually not one that crisply and cleanly will ever end the occupation. Phyllis knows this as well as anyone. They're going to have these mercenary forces at that massive Baghdad embassy that's the size of 80 football fields as long as that remains the U.S. embassy. Most countries have a modest embassy. We have an embassy that is the size of Vatican City. The Vatican has embassies in other countries. We have an embassy that's the size of the Vatican. That's going to require a massive mercenary force. I think that we're seeing a disturbing trend in the Obama administration now, where I think we have more and more right-wing forces that are being put into second-tier positions at DOD and NSA. And I think that the hawks that are at the top of those platforms are all part of the sort of corporate party. And that's a kind of sober reality right now. I think we're going to see these wars get worse, not more peaceful. I'll pass out razor blades later.